Hello and welcome back to Sabres of Infinity. Now, one of you has told me in the comments that I should be checking out the state of the war. I thought all those 4 points there were static, meaning they were just some text that doesn't change upon your story progression, but apparently this does, so we're going to read it now. A report on the state of the war between the forces of His Tiaran Majesty and the League of Antar. It also gives us a small little map here. We've already we've already been to Norinja. I don't think we've visited any of the other cities here. I mean, obviously none of those that are in Antari, in the Antari area. But I don't think we've even been to Karangia yet. Anyway, spring 602. With the thawing of the winter snows, the Tiaran army has begun expanding its beachhead around the town of Norinja. The king has demanded that at least 3 regiments of foot and 1 regiment of horse must be deployed, reinforce the forces in Antar by the end of summer. I think there's a word missing there. The Earl of Crittenden, Port Admiral at Northern Pillars, reports the Caligyan Sea to be free of Antari warships. Summer 602. Elements of the king's army have reached the river Karan. Construction has begun on numerous outposts along the river. Royal Tiaran intelligence reports that a large Antari army is being mustered to repel the Tiaran army. His Grace the Duke of Wolfram is dispatched to take overall command of the Tiaran army in Antar. The Northern Fleet attempts to launch an amphibious raid against the Antari port of Karangia. Shore batteries repel the attack. The Northern Fleet loses 2 frigates and a third rate of the line. The Royal Dragoon Regiment lands in Antar, along with the 6th of Foot, the 8th of Foot, and the Centauri Highlanders. Alright, so attempts were made on Karangia, but they were not successful. Autumn 602. A 14,000-strong Antari army advances south from Oktoberit with the intent of retaking Norinja. The Duke of Wolfram assembles a force of 9 regiments, numbering 6,000 men, to face the Antari with the intention of isolating individual columns and destroying the enemy by detail. Winter 602. After a 12-day running battle, the last 4,500 survivors of the Antari army surrender to the Duke of Wolfram's troops, 70 kilometers northeast of Norinja. Thousands of men die on both sides from the bitter winter weather. The Duke of Wolfram makes the decision to bypass the heavily fortified city of Karangia. As a result, the river Karan is designated the main line of defense on the western front. Elements of the Grenadier Guards, the 9th of Foot, and the White Rose Lancers are dispatched to reinforce the picket forces already present. Spring 603. Increased Tiaran presence along the river Karan has led to an increase in partisan activity. Royal Tiaran intelligence reports evidence of a second Antari army being assembled in northwest Antar. Summer 603. An army of 18,000 Antari advances south from Oktoberit. Their intention is to retake Norinja. The Earl of Wevin, Deputy Privy Councillor for War, proposes that His Tiaran Majesty offer the Antari favourable peace terms coupled with the payment of a face-saving level of war reparations. The proposal is dismissed out of hand. Autumn 603. The Duke of Wolfram successfully forces the Antari to divide their army into 3 parts, all of which are destroyed by Tiaran forces over a period of 2 weeks. Summer 604. The king requests that the Quartus add an additional 2 million crowns per annum to the military budget, for the purpose of maintaining the Tiaran forces in Antar. The proposal passes, barely. Autumn 604. The Duke of Wolfram leads a reconnaissance in force into the central plains of Antar, burning 16 villages and disrupting the harvest in that region. Antari envoys to the convocation of the Order's militant put forward a motion to excommunicate the United Kingdom of Tiara and declare them paria among nations. Royal Tiaran intelligence reports that Prince Mikhail of Korobirit demanded that the League Congress supply him with the authority to recruit fighting men from the holdings of all Antari lords for the purpose of creating an army to throw the Tiarans into the sea. He receives overwhelming support but is vetoed by a personal rival. Winter 604. Central Antar is hit by a severe famine, thanks to the raiding of Tiaran forces. The death toll reaches 75,000 by the beginning of spring. Spring 605. The Quartus votes to raise a tax on pewter bowls and plates to maintain the war in Antar. The state coffers, having once possessed reserves in excess of 30 million crowns, is now empty. Autumn 605. Antari envoys appeal to both the Court of the Sun and Heavens of Kianji and the Rikssenat of Takara for aid against the Tierans. Whatever that's supposed to mean. Spring 606. The Antari begin mounting major raids into Tieran-held Antar, comprising rapidly moving forces of 1 to 200 men. The convocation of the Order's militant vote against declaring Tierra paria among nations by a narrow margin. Summer 605. Royal Tierran intelligence reports that a series of accidental deaths have befallen several known personal and political enemies of Prince Mikhail of Korobirit. Summer 606. The Ministry of the Exchequer announces that the Tierran government will be more than 2.5 million crowns in debt by the end of 608. Autumn 606. The king presents the Duke of Wolfram with an ultimatum: end the war in Tierra's favor within a year or face dismissal from service. The king requests an additional 3 million crowns per annum from the courtiers to expand the royal army. His proposal is voted down by a margin of 3 to 1. The French political position is growing dangerously precarious. Royal Tierran intelligence reports that Prince Mikhail of Korobirit has successfully enlisted the aid and resources of nearly 200 lords of the Congress for the purpose of building his army. Riots break out in Tannersburg over the rising cost of bread. Without Antari imports, the price of grain has risen threefold. The Duke of Wolfram attempts another reconnaissance in force into the central plains, but is intercepted by a force of Antari cavalry. A 6-day running battle proves inconclusive with heavy losses on both sides. Winter 606. The Earl of Wevon once again proposes opening peace talks with the Antari, this time to open session of the courtiers. His motion passes by a margin of 7 votes. For the first time in 3 decades, a king of Tierra uses his royal prerogative to veto the motion. Royal Tierran intelligence reports that the League Congress has given Mikhail of Korobirit the authority to recruit an army to defeat the Tierrans within the next year. Reichsgraf Maximilian von Holt of the Takaran Rikssenat proposes sending observers to both Antari and Tierran armies to gain a better understanding of the Tierran-Antari war. The courtiers votes to raise taxes on coffee and postage stamps for the purposes of financing the war in Antar, raising 3 additional regiments of foot to reinforce the Tierran army. The average Tierran now pays twice as much in taxes as he did a decade ago. I'll have to look it up afterwards if this is just faux Dutch or if it's actual Dutch, because it just looks completely wrong to me. That is just generally completely wrong. So I'm going to assume it's some sort of made-up language based on Dutch. But yeah, it doesn't really look good. Spring 607. Antari raids increase in intensity and power, to the consternation of Grenadier Square. Royal Tierran intelligence reports that Mikhail of Korobirit has assembled an army of 40,000 men and is advancing south. Intendants representing the Takaran government arrive in Antar. Alright. So, the war has gone on for quite a long time. We've read that some people have already tried to stop it. I don't remember the name of the person who proposed peace talks, but I'm on his side. Where was it? I can't find it right now. It has to be somewhere in here. Yeah, the Earl of Wevon. Okay. If we ever meet him, we're on his side. Alright. And yeah, the war still continues, and apparently the Antari are now leading a force of 40,000 and are advancing upon our I hesitate to say border, but on our front line.